If you've ever pondered the meaning of life, have you ever thought about this? Does leading a meaningful life mean that you must have a life purpose, a life goal, something unique to accomplish? Well, movies like Ratatouille, Cars, and Turbo all show the incredible power of a protagonist trying to reach their dreams and accomplish their life goals. We see these epic stories as like the peak of life. We revere people like Usain Bolt, Mark Zuckerberg, and Tom Brady, and they were visionaries who wanted to achieve something great like winning the Super Bowl, becoming the fastest man alive, or making the world's largest social media network, right? But is that really the only way to get purpose in your life? To have this huge life goal and impact millions of people? Well, I'm here to criticize this claim. Um, I don't believe that one leads a meaningful life unless one has an overarching or singular goal or purpose. I think that you don't really need this overarching singular goal or purpose. Maybe at least not just one. Anyway, I believe that one can lead a meaningful life even if they don't have an overarching life goal or purpose, and especially when they don't have only one. So, my first argument here is that we can find meaning in life in things other than goals, okay? It's not just goals that are meaningful in this life. If you think about the like probably at least 10 years that you've lived on this planet, then you've experienced so much from family, friends, nature, the sky, like literally anything. And you probably pondered it too. There's so much more to life than just finding something you're good at and wanting to get better at it, or just finding somebody to help or something to accomplish. There's many more things than that. For example, here are some examples of things that are meaningful. First, serving the greater good of humanity, loving and caring for someone, finding meaning in suffering, becoming one with nature, and having narrative cohesion. So, first of all, let's head over to Viktor Frankl. If you don't know who Viktor Frankl is, he's a guy who survived 3 concentration camps in Nazi Germany, and basically his entire family died, and he's kind of a therapist, psychiatrist kind of guy. And he was kind of pondering this fact that, okay, you need a meaning in life to kind of survive these terrible ordeals, right? We need a meaning in life to kind of rationalize like why we need to keep living, even though like the Nazis are like killing us all. So he found 3 possible sources of meaning in life. First, loving and caring for someone else, like loving another human being so much that you understand them on a deep level, like whether it's your wife or your child, something like that. Also, another is finding meaning in suffering. So, if you're faced with a unique affliction, like if you're dying from cancer or you're getting tortured, your duty is to not just cower in fear and accept your fate of death. Maybe you can accept your fate of death, but you have to do it with a smile on your face. You have to accept your own freedom, that you have 2 choices in life, right? To basically, you get to choose what you think and how you act, even if everybody else takes that away. And the third one is having a life goal to reach after, right? So I'm not saying that life goals don't offer meaning. They can, right? But it's not the only way. So let's go first to the meaning of suffering. I want to talk about somebody named Anthony Ray Hinton. He was wrongfully incarcerated on death row for 28 years for a crime he didn't commit. And this was in Alabama, right? So Anthony Ray Hinton was black, and he was framed for being a black guy and shooting up a white couple. Which should not happen at all. But so for 28 years, he sat on death row for a crime that he knew that he didn't commit, right? So, but he learned to find meaning in his suffering, which was to alleviate the pain of his other death row inmates and give them company. On death row, you have the absolute worst people of all time. You have rapists, murderers, just flat out like criminals, right? There was even this KKK member, Henry Hayes, who was on death row the same year that Anthony Ray Hinton was there. And Anthony Ray Hinton actually became friends with this KKK member who lynched a black kid in like 1990. He became friends with him, and he reformed him to actually become someone who wasn't hateful. So it's really powerful, and you have to admit that that's something meaningful. He found meaning in helping these men when no other person on this planet wanted to help them, right? They're all alone. And Anthony Ray Hinton went out there and decided that his mission was to help these people, find God, was to help these people find some semblance of humanity in the little time they had left, right? That eventually gave him his freedom after 30 years. You can also go to this example of Sisyphus. He rebels against the gods by pushing up a boulder for eternity. By finding happiness in pushing up the boulder, Sisyphus takes fate into his own hands. Even though it was a meaningless punishment designed from the gods that's meant to be tedious and futile, if Sisyphus enjoys it, he's actively rebelling against the gods. He's actively taking his fate into his own hands, and thus it becomes meaningful. By finding happiness in that task, Sisyphus protects these two freedoms, how we think and how we act, and remains an autonomous man with meaning. The last point of meaning we can find is narrative cohesion. For example, we love movies and books so much because good writing has a lot of foreshadowing and interconnected plot lines. We think of a good life as one that has no unnecessary meaningless parts, right? Everything has a reasoning for happening, and so we value that as being something meaningful. But let's take an example for a person who likes doing crossword puzzles, and that's the only thing he does is like meaningless entertainment. We have to agree that that's kind of meaningless, right? Just because you enjoy something doesn't mean it's meaningful. It can be the most mundane activity in the world. It doesn't affect anyone, right? But what if he finally completes this crossword puzzle that his dead father who died 10 years ago couldn't, right? And he finally completes that. That would be so cathartic. That would be a narrative, cohesive ending, right? You would be like carrying on the torch. He changed a mundane activity into something worthy of meaning that fits in the framework of his life. And for like another example, doing your 6th rerun of Friends is objectively not meaningful. But if for the first 3 reruns that you did it, your mother was alive and watching for the next 3, you continued the tradition by watching the next 3 reruns without her, but on the same like time frame, and that becomes meaningful. It reminds you of your past life. It reminds you of the relationship that you had with her. That becomes meaningful. The second argument is that one goal isn't really good enough. Once you achieve your goals, then what? You're hit with a meaningless void. What if you have a goal to achieve, but random chance takes that away from you? With life circumstances, your goals will likely change. For example, let's think about some life circumstances that can prevent you from ever reaching like this one life purpose you have. Imagine if Usain Bolt was paralyzed in a car accident, but he still had a dream of being the fastest runner. But now that's essentially impossible. He didn't want to become like the fastest Paralympic runner, he just wanted to become the fastest runner. Now it'd be absolutely impossible now. Since he had that one like overarching life goal, his life would be meaningless since it becomes impossible for him to do it. And going back to Anthony Ray Hinton, he had a dream of being a baseball player, but racism in Alabama never had the chance. He never got the chance to actually become a pro baseball player, even though his batting average was .618, right? Which would at least get you a look from a scout. So for 10 years before he went to jail, he was aimless, only living for his family and for a woman. He had no goals, no meaning, until he found meaning in his suffering on death row. And also, what you think is your life vocation can change on his head because of life circumstances. From Born on the 4th of July, Robert Kovic had a dream of fighting valiantly in Vietnam, but instead all he received was permanent paralysis when he got shot in the spine. Wheelchair-bound and spiteful, he became anti-war instead of pro-war, like he used to be. This is a quote from page 35 from the book. "I know that I'm going to make it now. I'm going to make it not because of any god or any religion, but because I want to make it. I want to live. And I leave the screaming man without legs and am brought to a room that is very bright." You'll often want more if you accomplish your goal. From the article Why Success Won't Make You Happy, the author writes, though it isn't a conventional medical addiction, for many people success has addictive properties, right? You're always going to want more. It's like this dopamine hit again and again. And my personal view is that just putting aside all these things like, okay, your goals might change. Like if you finish one goal, you're going to want another one. My personal view is that one life goal limits you on the domain of human life, right? It limits your essence as a human being. Being a basketball player is cool and all, but it reduces your infinite potential as this thinking human being, this mound of flesh that has infinite mental capabilities. And it just reduces you to being just good at throwing a basketball in a hoop, right? You limit your experiences and worldview. The meaning in life should be in understanding as much of the world, as much of the universe as possible, not as little. Okay, and for some counter arguments my opponents might have against me, they would say without a goal, don't have a direction. I mean, that's true. You may not have a direction or an idea for what to do every day, but a direction isn't necessary for meaning. A monk can meditate every day and achieve enlightenment on a cosmic scale. Could you really say that that's as meaningless as a guy just sitting on his couch and watching Stranger Things for the sixth time? And also, if goals offer direction, then what happens when you accomplish them? Let's see a quote from Richard Taylor. If the builders of a great and flourishing ancient civilization could somehow return to see archaeologists unearthing the trivial remnants of what they had accomplished with such effort, they could indeed ask themselves what the point of it all was. If this was all it finally came to, yet it did not seem so for them, for it was just a building, and that was finally built that gave their life meaning. Nobody lives thinking about what they create or do and how it won't be remembered 1,000 years into the future. That's just way too large a timescale for us to worry about and think about. Instead, we derive joy and meaning from living in the here and now. We derive joy from building buildings that people within the next 20 or 10 or even 5 years will use, not 1,000 years later knowing that our civilization will crumble. We create and accomplish things even if we know that they'll be forgotten decades later, because the activity itself has intrinsic meaning for us. It doesn't just have to be something we enjoy. It could be something that has narrative cohesion, right? Or it could be a way for us to find meaning in suffering. Not only that, but having one goal makes you susceptible to terrible downfall when life prevents you from ever achieving that goal. Often we have to adapt and change our mindsets and worldview, but that's just life.